The sun had barely set behind the jagged sandstone cliffs when Clara noticed, in the kind of quiet that made your stomach twist before your mind even understood why. Evening usually brought a hum to the Rawson homestead, the distant clatter of horses, the low murmur of ranch hands settling in, the squeak of wagon wheels cooling after a day's work. But tonight, the silence lay over the ranch like a blanket stretched too tight. Clara brushed her palms on her skirt, trying to shake off the unease tugging at her ribs. She carried a bowl of cooled stew toward the house, thinking only of Tom Rawson, the man who had saved her twice in her life, once from a flood and once from herself. She paused halfway to the porch when a sound broke through the air. A soft, uneven huff, like someone trying to breathe through pain. Her heart slammed against her chest. It came again, a faint, throaty exhale from the direction of the supply wagon parked near the corral. Clara's breath hitched as the bowl in her hands rattled against the spoon. "Tom," she whispered, though he was nowhere in sight. She set the bowl down on a barrel and slowly backed toward the doorway, eyes locked on the wagon. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. She didn't know why she didn't run. Maybe because she had lived long enough on the frontier to understand that running only made predators chase faster. Instead, she moved like a woman in a dream, light steps, careful breaths until she found Tom near the stable, repairing a broken stirrup. "Tom," she whispered again, this time grabbing his arm. "Something's breathing under the wagon." Tom straightened, so fast his hat nearly fell off. His brows furrowed, not in disbelief, but in that instinctive readiness he carried like a second skin. "You sure?" he asked quietly. Clara nodded, and he didn't waste another second. Without a word, he slid his revolver from its holster and motioned for her to stay behind him. The walk from the stable to the wagon felt endless, the air thick with dust and dread. The wind had died, the sky had dimmed, and shadows pooled under the wagon like ink. Tom crouched slowly, his boots crunching softly on the hard dirt. Clara held her breath as he leaned down and lowered himself to one knee. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the steady grip he kept on the gun, the way he exhaled as though he were preparing for anything, a wounded cougar, a bandit lying in wait, or one of the strange drifters rumored to have crossed these lands lately. But nothing prepared him for what he actually saw. "Oh, God!" His voice dropped to a shudder. Clara gasped. "What is it?" For a long moment, Tom didn't answer. His face softened. His eyes widened in a way she had never seen. Not fear, not confusion, but something deeper. Something breaking. Slowly, he set the gun aside and reached both hands under the wagon. Clara stepped forward, her heart pounding. Tom dragged a limp body out from beneath the wagon and gently turned it over. A man, dust covered, bleeding, barely conscious. His face was bruised, his clothes torn by long travel or a fight. And then Clara understood Tom's expression, because the man on the ground had Tom's eyes, his jawline, his sunburnt skin. "This can't be," Tom whispered. But it was. The man was his brother, a brother he had not seen in nearly 7 years. A brother he believed dead, the same brother who vanished after a violent feud with a group of outlaws known as the Craven Ridge. Riders, men so ruthless the law, refused to chase them into the mountains. Tom's voice cracked. "James," he said, his hands trembling as he lifted his brother's head. Clara covered her mouth. She had heard stories of Tom's brother, the wild one, the restless one, the one who always chased the horizon until one day he never returned. Tom had cried once for him and never again. But here he was, alive, barely breathing, hiding under their wagon like a hunted man. "Clara," Tom said hoarsely, "get water. And bandages, hurry." She didn't hesitate. Everything inside her screamed to run faster, breathe harder, move like never before. She sprinted to the house, grabbed every medical scrap she could find, and dashed back. Tom cradled James with a gentleness she had never seen in him before. "He's burning up," Tom muttered. "He's been running for days." Clara knelt, handing him the water. James swallowed weakly before whispering the first word they'd heard from him. Tom leaned in. "I'm here. I've got you." James's cracked lips shook as he forced out the next words. "They're coming." Clara froze. Tom's grip tightened. "Who?" James swallowed again, eyes fluttering open just enough to reveal pure terror. "The riders." Tom's breath left his chest like he'd been kicked. Clara felt the chill stab her spine. If the Craven Ridge riders were coming, they weren't just after James. They were coming straight toward the Rawson Ranch, toward their home, their life, their peace, and they would kill anyone standing in their way. Tom lifted his brother in his arms. "Clara, listen to me," he said, voice steady but eyes fierce. "Get inside. Bar the doors. Light every lamp. We don't have much time." But Clara didn't move, because in that moment, all three of them heard it, far off in the hills. The sound of horses, many horses, the first distant. Hoofbeats echoed across the valley just as the last streaks of sunset died behind the mountains. Clara felt the sound before she truly heard it, a thrumming through the ground, faint but certain, like the pulse of something terrible approaching. Tom carried his injured brother into the house while Clara rushed ahead to push the heavy oak table against the front door. It scraped loudly across the wooden floor, but the noise didn't matter. The riders had already marked their trail. Tom set James on the couch, his breath labored, his body shaking from fever and exhaustion. Clara lit every lamp she could find, and soon the house glowed with warm but trembling light. Shadows darted across the walls as if the fear inside. The room had taken a physical form. "Clara," Tom said, pulling his rifle from the mantel, "if they find us, I need you to stay behind me." "No matter what happens," she swallowed. "Tom, they won't stop, will they?" "Not until they have him." Tom didn't need to explain who him meant. James, the brother who had once lived wild and free, who had vanished into the mountains, who had apparently crossed the riders one last time, hard enough for them to hunt him across the desert. James stirred, forcing out a whisper. "Tom, you have to leave me outside. If they think I'm here, they'll—" "No," Tom snapped, but softly, the way a man speaks when his heart is cracking. "You're my blood. I'm not handing you over." James's voice was a rasp. "Tom, they'll kill her too." Tom turned his eyes to Clara, and in that moment she understood the depth of what lay between them. Love strong enough to fight a dozen men, love strong enough to stand between her and death itself. But she shook her head. "We don't abandon family," she said, her voice trembling but firm. Outside, the hoofbeats grew louder. Clara peeked through the window. At least 12 riders were descending the ridge. Dark silhouettes, long coats flapping, rifles glinting in the moonlight. The Craven Ridge riders, the kind of men who left whole towns, burned because someone refused to hand them a meal. The kind of men who carved their names into the memory of anyone unlucky enough to cross them. Tom extinguished the lamp closest to the window. "Stay low," he warned. Clara crouched beside James, holding his hand even though sweat soaked his skin. She could feel the terror in him, but also the shame. "I never meant to bring this on you," James murmured. "I was just trying to get away." Tom loaded his rifle with slow, steady hands. "Tell me what happened." James winced. "I found something I shouldn't have. Documents, names, proof of things they've done. I was going to take it to the marshal." Clara's eyes widened. Tom's jaw tightened. "Where is it now?" "On me," James whispered, lifting a trembling hand toward his vest. Clara reached into the pocket and pulled out a small leather pouch. Inside were folded papers, worn, dirt-stained, but still legible. "Enough to hang the whole gang." Clara looked at Tom. He nodded. "That's why they won't stop." Suddenly, hoofbeats thundered into the yard. Lanterns swung. Voices barked orders. The riders had arrived. Tom positioned himself beside the front window, rifle aimed. The riders spread out across the yard, circling like wolves. Their leader, a tall man with a scar down one cheek, called out, "Rawson! We know he's in there. Hand over the traitor, and we'll let the rest of you walk away." Tom didn't answer. Silence stretched. Clara felt James's hand tighten weakly over hers. The leader chuckled darkly. "Have it your way." A gunshot shattered the night. Glass exploded from the back window. Clara threw herself over. James and Tom fired back, dropping one rider from his horse. Chaos erupted. Hooves thundered. Rifles cracked. Bullets punched through the wooden walls, spraying splinters through the room. Tom moved with the precision of a man who had survived. Too many fights. With each shot, another rider fell or fled into the shadows. Clara dragged James to the floor, shielding him with her own body, whispering, "Hold on. Please hold on." A bullet tore through the lamp above them, plunging half the room into flickering darkness. Tom shouted, "Clara, keep down!" The riders regrouped outside. Torches were lit. The leader yelled, "Burn them out!" Clara's breath froze. Tom knew what that meant. Frontier justice. flames for anyone who stood in their way. He grabbed James under the shoulders. "Clara, back door!" They dragged James toward the kitchen, gunfire pounding behind them. Tom kicked the back door open just as a torch smashed against the front wall. Flames licked upward instantly, hungry and bright. They stumbled into the cold night. Smoke curled behind them. Horses screamed. The riders spotted them and charged. Tom fired until his rifle clicked empty. Clara's lungs burned as she helped James stumble toward the barn. "Almost there, please God." Almost there. Tom slammed the barn doors behind them and bolted them shut. Horses snorted nervously inside. Flames from the house cast an orange glow across the yard through the cracks. "Tom," Clara whispered, trembling. "We're trapped." Tom turned, his face streaked with smoke and sweat. "No, we have a chance." He helped James onto his horse and tightened the reins into James's shaking hands. "Ride straight to the marshal. Don't stop. Don't look back." "Tom," James choked. "Go." Tom slapped the horse, sending it bursting through the rear barn doors. The riders yelled and gave chase. Clara grabbed Tom's arm. "What about us?" Tom mounted the second horse and pulled her up behind him. "Hold on." The world became a blur of wind, fire, gunshots, and pounding hooves as they tore across the open field under the moonlit sky. Behind them, the Rawson house burned. But ahead, hope flickered like a distant lantern. As long as they kept riding, as long as the night held, they still had a chance. And by dawn, the riders would learn exactly who they had dared to chase. Because blood, love, and truth, when cornered, will rise fiercer than fire. And this was only the beginning.